Pokémon. The dream that caught the world, a calm bedtime documentary for Game Over, Goodnight. It's late. The lights are low. Somewhere in the distance, the soft hum of an old console still glows, keeping a quiet promise to the child you once were. Tonight, we're not chasing high scores or headlines. We're chasing memories. So close your eyes, breathe in, and let the story carry you back to where adventure was small enough to fit in your hands. This is Game Over. Good night. You can hear it even before you remember it. The faint click of plastic. The soft rubber of a D-pad creaking under your thumb. The slow, patient glow of a little green screen in the dark. Somewhere, a tiny speaker exhales its melody. Brave, imperfect, tinny, but certain. And it takes you back past the years, past the noise, to an evening where the room is quiet and the world is simple. Batteries rattle in your palm. The cursor blinks like a heartbeat. It's late, but not lonely. It feels like being told a story by a friend you haven't met yet. You are here. Maybe it's winter. Maybe it's a summer night that smells like rain after heat. It could be Christmas morning. The tree lights waking in slow pulses. Glass ornaments glowing like tiny auroras. Paper crinkled and saved for later. Your hands are smaller. Your curiosity larger. A rectangle of light becomes your entire horizon. You press A, and something gentle inside you opens like a door. This is the story of that door, and the child who found its key by listening to the quiet. It begins far away, before names you know, before Pikachu chirped in a million living rooms, before cards changed hands like playground currency, before a stadium roared to the rhythm of imaginary creatures made real by applause. It begins with a boy in Japan walking in grass that reaches his knees, catching the first companions he would ever know, small, bright lives balanced on his fingertips, then released. He was not gathering trophies. He was learning the shape of wonder. The boy's name was Satoshi Tajiri, and in the evenings the fields near his home were alive with a patience the city could not understand. Dragonflies stitched the air with invisible thread. Cicadas tuned the dusk with a chorus older than language. When the fireflies arrived, slow stars drifting at shoulder height, the world felt large, but not frightening. Everything glowed if you watched it long enough. Everything had a pattern if you listened carefully. He did. He listened. He learned. You can almost hear it now. A summer screen door sliding in its track. A mother's voice calling. The tiny clink of a glass jar set gently on a table. You are there even if you weren't. Because that is how stories work when they're told right. They make room inside themselves for you. Pokemon would do that better than any idea its era produced. It would make room. It would whisper, "Would you like to come along?" Satoshi didn't know, walking those fields, that he was collecting metaphors. He only knew the thrill of discovery without conquest. To notice something living. To understand where it might want to go. To hold it lightly and let it leave a little braver than when you found it. He was learning the first rule of the world he would one day build. To catch is not to own. To catch is to meet. The city grew around him. Tokyo's drumbeat swelled. The neon hymns of arcades, the echo of coins, the laughter of competition. Nature's chorus dimmed. The cicadas still sang. But only ere the pavement ended, Satoshi began collecting again. This time not insects but experiences, sounds, systems, the curious physics of fun. He wrote them down. He drew diagrams. He pressed his face close to screens and looked for seams, like a tailor inspecting a suit, like a biologist peering through glass. And in the blur of pixels and possibility, he felt a lonely itch to connect the old world to the new. He started a fanzine with friends. They called it Game Freak, a name that makes you smile now because you know what it will become. At the time, it was paper and staples and a stubborn tenderness for games. They reviewed, they analyzed, they adored. And then quietly they began to make things of their own. It was the late 1980s. Japan was a reactor of creativity. Designs leapt from napkins to chips overnight. There was a sense among the young that the future was a tightrope worth walking without a net. Satoshi, Ken Sugimori, and later Junichi Masuda, names with no echo yet, hands with no legend yet, worked from joy more than expectation. If you close your eyes, you can see them over a small table that wobbles when someone laughs. Pencil dust on wood, a cassette recorder on pause, the smell of ink and instant noodles. To be alive in a room like that is to be forgiven for every safe choice you never made. The first games were humble. The first paychecks were late. The first nights without sleep were the ones that decided everything. They learned to listen to each other. They learned to protect ideas the way you cup a moth so it doesn't harm itself on the light. And somewhere in that listening, the fields called again. Quieter now, but not gone. The boy who collected bugs was still there, asking a question only he could hear. What if the companions of my childhood could live in a world that travels with you? You remember your first link cable if you had one. It didn't feel like technology. It felt like a promise that your world didn't stop at the edge of your screen. Two rectangles of light facing each other, a thin filament between them, and suddenly your friend's room touched yours. Don't pull it, someone would say. Be careful. You were careful. You were reverent. Your tiny creatures became ambassadors crossing a border that existed only because someone dared to imagine it could be crossed. That was the spark. Every dream passes through its shadow. Game Freaks was a small office with big silence. The walls were thin. The air smelled of solar and burnt coffee. Outside, the world was loud with new consoles and color screens. But inside these rooms, the project that would one day eclipse them all was barely breathing. They had been working on Pokémon for 6 years. 6 years of sketches and rewrites, of debugging lines that broke like spiderwebs, of code so fragile it shivered under new ideas. Nintendo's executives were polite but distant. Collecting? Trading? Children won't understand. Some smiled when they said it, the way adults do when they think they're being kind. Money evaporated first, as it always does. Then morale. Then health. Masuda fell asleep at keyboards that hummed like refrigerators. Sugimori drew through migraines. Tajiri stopped answering the phone. Yet every morning they came back, drawn by something that didn't make economic sense. The need to finish a promise. You've been there too. The late night project no one believes in but you. That quiet conviction that if you stop, something gentle will die in the dark. It's a strange love. Part duty, part faith, part stubbornness. You tell yourself it doesn't matter if the world never notices. You just want it to exist. Then one afternoon, Shigeru Miyamoto visited. He looked around the room. The wires, the notes, the diagrams of impossible creatures, and didn't laugh. He nodded. It reminds me, he said, of when we made Donkey Kong. Not a blessing. Something better. Acknowledgement. The air changed. They could breathe again. When Pokemon was almost finished, Tajiri added one last creature hidden deep in the code, a mythical being named Mew. It wasn't marketing. It wasn't strategy. It was gratitude. A thank you to the code itself for not collapsing under the weight of its dream. Mew would live unseen, waiting to be discovered. Proof that the invisible still matters. 1996 Japan. The cartridges are gray, unassuming. Pokemon Red and Pokemon Green. No fireworks, just boxes on store shelves and quiet hope. At first, not many notice. Then a rumor spreads, whispered on schoolyards, that there's a hidden monster you can't find unless you look deeper than the game expects. Children begin to trade. Link cables come alive. You can hear it. The click of connectors. The squeal of laughter when the trade completes. One small screen shares with another, and something ancient wakes up in the circuitry. The feeling that wonder multiplies when shared. Sales explode. Stores run out of stock. Newspapers call it mania. But beneath the headlines is something purer. Connection as contagion. One child teaches another, who teaches another, until it's less like a game and more like a language. Tajiri watches from the sidelines, exhausted and astonished. His dream is alive, and it has decided to travel without him. You remember it now. That first summer, when the world itself seemed to hum with the same 8-bit melody. The anime began, bright, earnest, and brave in its simplicity. A boy named Ash, a yellow companion that squeaked with mischief, a theme song that turned Saturday mornings into ritual. I want to be the very best. You sang it under your breath, cereal going soggy, backpack half zipped. The words felt like a promise disguised as pop. Across Japan, and soon across oceans, Pokemon stopped being a product and became a pattern of living. Kids woke up early to trade cards, battled after school, drew teams on notebook paper. Teachers confiscated decks only to give them back at day's end because even they could see this was not rebellion, but wonder finding new language. The cards gleamed under fluorescent lights, thin sheets of cardboard carrying friendship the way letters once carried news. The playground became a stock exchange of imagination. I'll give you my Pidgeot for that Blastoise. Only if it's in a sleeve. Deal. The slap of plastic binders closing was its own applause. And beneath it all, a quiet lesson. Value is a story we agreed to tell together. In homes across the world, Game Boys hummed on bus seats and kitchen tables. Children traded by flashlight under blankets, hoping parents wouldn't notice the glow. Somewhere in the dark, two small worlds touched, and both became larger. The phenomenon crossed the Pacific like weather. 1998. American toy stores opened early. Morning news anchors mispronounced the names. Yet the children didn't need translation. They already spoke Pokemon fluently, through mimicry, laughter, rumor. You might remember tearing open a booster pack, the smell of ink and foil sharp and sweet, the gasp when a holographic shimmer caught the light. For a moment, you were rich in a currency only children understood. The film Mewtwo Strikes Back arrived that same year. The franchise's first mirror held up to itself. In dark theaters filled with sneakers and popcorn dust, the story asked whether strength without empathy meant anything at all. You cried when Pikachu tried to revive its stone-still friend, and you didn't know why. Only that the sadness felt clean. Behind the global roar, Game Freak tried to stay small. New generations were already on the horizon, gold and silver, then ruby and sapphire. Each brought regions that felt like fresh notebooks, new maps to label, new songs to hum. Yet the heart stayed gentle. Evolution, it turned out, was not about outgrowing the past but carrying it forward softly. You can chart your own years by cartridges: red and blue for childhood, silver for middle school, emerald for first heartbreak, diamond for the slow courage of growing up. Each cartridge a chapter, each save file a diary entry written in light. The early 2000s arrived with handhelds that folded like books. The Game Boy Advance, the DS with its twin screens, one for the road ahead, one for reflection. Wi-Fi made the link cable invisible but eternal. You could trade across oceans now, your creature flickering through unseen wires to reach someone whose language you didn't share, but whose joy sounded the same through tiny speakers. Pokemon's world widened without hard edges. Regions took on weather, seasons, time of day, gentle reminders that change could be rhythmic, not abrupt. You didn't need to rush. Morning would always come, and with it, another patch of grass, another chance to find something rare. And still, the melody. Junichi Masuda's music evolved too. Richer hardware giving him more notes to choose from, yet he kept the old restraint. He said once that every tune had to sound good through a child's bedroom wall, that if a parent overheard it, they should feel calm, not weary. By the time the Nintendo DS connected trainers worldwide, the game had become a small model of ideal society. Cooperation rewarded, kindness encoded, curiosity unpunished. You could battle fiercely and still end friends. You could lose and still be proud. Then, years later, came the strange summer of 2016, when phones replaced Game Boys and the planet briefly remembered how to walk. Pokemon GO spread like an invitation more than an app. Parks filled with laughter. Strangers compared catches under streetlights. Cafes put signs in their windows. Lure active. Trainers welcome. For a few months, the world tilted toward joy. You might remember it. The warm hum of evening, phones raised like lanterns, groups of teenagers and grandparents chasing invisible creatures through real streets. The air buzzed with the same energy that once filled a Japanese playground 20 years earlier. Satoshi's field had returned, multiplied across continents. It wasn't perfect. Servers crashed, GPS stuttered, but none of that mattered. For a flicker of time, technology's cold glass turned into stained glass, letting light through in colors we hadn't seen in years. Reporters called it nostalgia. Maybe. But nostalgia is just memory looking for company. Pokemon GO gave it millions of walking partners. From there, the franchise continued to unfold like origami that never ran out of folds. Sun and Moon brought warmth, Sword and Shield brought spectacle, Legends Arceus whispered history. Yet beneath every new mechanic you could still hear the old insect songs of Satoshi's youth, patient, patterned, alive. And when the Nintendo Switch arrived letting you play at home or outside, it felt almost symbolic. The boundary between screen and world dissolving one step further. You could rest on a park bench and battle a friend miles away, sunlight mixing with pixel light, until you couldn't tell which was older. Pokemon had become more than a series. It was a mirror for how we learned to connect. As technology grew louder, the games kept whispering the same truth. Progress means little if it forgets to be kind. You still hear that when you start a new file. The professor asks your name. You choose a companion. The world opens, small but infinite, and for a moment, you are a child again. Not because you have gone backward, but because the game has met you halfway. If you strip away every mechanic, every stat, every shiny variation, you find something small and glowing at the center of Pokemon. It is not a number or an algorithm, it is a feeling. That the world is kinder when we share what we love. Every generation of games hides the same lesson in different shapes. Catching isn't conquering, battling isn't cruelty, trading isn't loss. They are rehearsals for empathy, tiny rituals that teach patience, respect, and curiosity without ever preaching. When your Pokemon faints, the music softens instead of scolding. You pick it up, take it to a place called a center, and someone heals it with no demand for payment. Every town has such a place. Imagine if the real world did. Think of evolution. It doesn't happen when you want it. It happens when both of you are ready. Sometimes friendship, sometimes a stone, sometimes the courage to trade a beloved partner away and trust that it will return stronger. It's an education in letting go. That's the philosophy of connection. Hidden inside code, offered as play. Most games reward domination. Pokemon rewards noticing. It asks you to look closely at color, at habitat, at mood. It teaches that difference is advantage, that no single type beats all others. Balance lives in variety. If you were a lonely kid, the game gave you a companion that never left. If you were social, it gave you a reason to gather. Either way, it met you where you were. The designers have said they wanted the world to feel safe, a place where nothing truly dies. That's why fainted partners never bleed, why villains usually repent, why the day always resets bright. It's a digital Eden, but one we can believe in because it never promises perfection, only kindness. And that's why decades later, adults still return, not for difficulty, for mercy. Some nights you still play. Maybe you load an old cartridge that barely saves anymore, or a Switch with a modern region blooming on its screen. The melody begins, and you feel your shoulders drop. The world outside slows its pulse to match a memory. You walk a few steps through tall grass. A wild creature appears. Its cry a chord between nostalgia and surprise. You catch it gently, not because you must, but because the act itself feels like prayer. You look up. The lamp beside you hums like the handheld once did. If you close your eyes, you can hear cicadas again, even if it's winter where you are. The story could end there, but Pokemon refuses to. It evolves still. Not just in graphics or mechanics, but in spirit. Children who once traded under playground trees now trade with their own kids at kitchen tables. Mothers who once told their sons to turn the volume down now tap at phone screens, comparing Pokédex entries. Grandparents send postcards through Pokemon GO. Generations stack like translucent slides, each one illuminating the next. The link cable never snapped, it just became the internet. And the hum between two Game Boys became the quiet latency of love across distance. When you think about it, that's all Satoshi Tajiri ever wanted, a way for children to feel what he felt when a small living thing trusted his hand. He built a world that could outlast him by teaching millions how to hold the fragile and let it fly. The dreaming future. The modern games shimmer with size now, open fields, weather, multiplayer co-op, yet they still begin the same. A professor, a question, a choice of 3. Bulbasaur, Charmander, Squirtle, Sprigatito, Fuecoco, Quaxley, different names, same heartbeat. Every choice is a new way of saying yes to curiosity. If you start a file tonight, you will still hear that same music, slightly higher in fidelity but identical in hope. And somewhere a child across the world will do the same. Your journeys will never intersect, yet they rhyme. That's what makes Pokemon eternal. It's not nostalgia that keeps it alive, it's rhythm. The rhythm of discovery, of care, of quiet competition without cruelty. The rhythm of small kindnesses accumulating until they feel like faith. You might think of Tajiri sometimes, the man who preferred solitude, who listened to insects and found a universe in their flutter. He doesn't give many interviews now, but imagine him walking at dusk, maybe outside Tokyo, hearing the faint chime of a smartphone alert in the distance. He smiles. His field has multiplied 1,000,000,000-fold. The world still catches and releases, still trades and evolves, still glows under screens small enough to fit in a pocket, large enough to hold a dream. And now the night is quiet again, the lights dim. Somewhere, a console powers down with a soft click. The melody lingers, neither ending nor beginning, a loop, a lullaby. You breathe with it. You remember. The story of Pokemon was never just about monsters. It was about us, about a strange, gentle instinct to connect. You can close your eyes now. The world you built inside that little screen will wait for you. It always has. The summer of Pokemon GO faded, but its echo stayed in the air like heat that lingers after sunset. The world had tasted a simple kind of joy, walking, seeing, sharing, and it didn't forget. Even when headlines moved on and the crowds thinned, something in us had changed. We had proved that connection could be an adventure all by itself. After the noise of that summer came a quieter autumn. Players kept walking, slower now, less frantic. Some still chased every spawn. Others simply liked the way the app made the ordinary world look enchanted again. A fountain wasn't just a fountain, it was a Pokestop, a church wall, a gym. A morning commute became a small pilgrimage. It was as though Tajiri's childhood field had spread over the planet and was whispering, "Look closer. There's life everywhere." Meanwhile, in Tokyo, the developers watched. They saw the same pattern that had followed Pokemon since the beginning. A spark of mania, then a settling into rhythm, then endurance. The franchise had become a living organism, pulsing between excitement and calm, contraction and release, like breath. They built around that rhythm. New games would always arrive in pairs, not to force double spending, but to remind people that no one version of the world is complete alone. You probably remember your own rhythm with it. Maybe it was the late night release of Diamond and Pearl, the first midnight line you ever stood in. Maybe it was Heart Gold and Soul Silver, nostalgia polished to mirror brightness. Or maybe it was Black and White, the one that dared to start over, new region, new creatures, no cameos from the past until you earned them. It felt risky then, but looking back, it was brave. The series teaching its audience how to let go without losing love. The 2010s unfolded like a long exhale. Technology sprinted ahead, life blurred. Pokemon stayed steady, gentle, familiar. It grew not by shouting, but by remembering. The sprites became 3D models, yet the eyes still looked curious, not fierce. Menus gleamed with modern gloss, but the music still carried the same lull of safety. In those years, a strange ritual emerged online. Fans began Nuzlockes, self-imposed challenges where fainted Pokemon were considered gone forever. It was play-turned elegy. Players mourned pixels and learned empathy anew. Communities built memorial pages for their fallen partners. It sounds dramatic, but it was beautiful. People proving that digital friendship can hurt and heal like any other. Around that same time, Pokemon Center stores multiplied. Bright, fragrant spaces filled with plush creatures arranged like temple offerings. Walking into one felt like stepping inside a child's drawing come to life. You could hear Masuda's melodies faintly through speakers, smell clean plastic and coffee from the nearby cafe. Parents took picture with kids hugging life-sized Eevees, and somewhere behind the scenes a quiet truth pulsed. This was not a brand. It was a memory museum where the exhibit still breathed. The competitive scene grew too. Tournaments filled halls with the sound of shuffling feet and the clicking of controllers. Yet even here, among strategy charts and frame data, the air stayed courteous. Opponents shook hands before battles. They said good game and meant it. It wasn't perfect, but it was healthier than most sports you could name. The philosophy of connection had infected even rivalry. Then came the Switch, a machine that refused to choose between handheld and home. Pokemon moved in easily as if it had been waiting for a console that could live two lives at once. Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee arrived first, gentle remakes that felt like lullabies to the originals. They blurred nostalgia and newness so smoothly that players couldn't tell which memories were old and which were being made right then. The pandemic years followed, shrinking the physical world but expanding digital bonds. Pokemon adapted again. Home, Unite, Legends Arceus, Scarlet and Violet each tried a different shape of connection, collecting across decades, co-op battles, reimagined pasts, open futures. The technology changed, but the feeling didn't. You still start with a partner. You still walk into tall grass. You still hear that note of possibility that sounds like the first breath after waking. The quiet middle of life, somewhere along the way you grew up. Maybe you stopped for a while. Life filled with bills and schedules and the endless noise of adulthood. The cartridges gathered dust. Then one night, cleaning a drawer, you found one, still warm in memory though cold in hand. You slotted it in out of curiosity. The screen blinked to life and suddenly the years folded like paper cranes. The save file loaded. 16 badges. A party of names that once meant everything. A date stamp from a summer you thought you'd forgotten. The past didn't speak. It hummed. You smiled, maybe teared up a little, and understood that the games had kept living quietly without you. When you saved and turned it off again, it wasn't sadness you felt. It was gratitude. That something from childhood had stayed pure enough to meet you again as an equal. People online call this the Forever series. They mean that every generation can enter without needing the last. But it also means the series forgives absence. You can walk away for 10 years and it will still greet you kindly, as if you had only stepped outside for air. That grace is rare in art. It's rarer still in commerce. Pokemon manages it because it remembers what other franchises forget. Time isn't the enemy, it's the habitat. Every creature you catch, every friend you make, every card you trade becomes sediment in the fossil record of your life. The link cable's grandchildren. Today, trades move through clouds instead of cords. You can send a Pokemon caught on a 3-inch Game Boy to a 4K screen halfway around the world. That continuity, that care for lineage, is almost absurd in the tech industry, where obsolescence is gospel. Yet here it is, the same data structure, the same spirit, crossing 25 years of hardware like a pilgrim. Sometimes late at night, servers go down for maintenance and the world feels a little emptier. You realize how much invisible infrastructure keeps this shared dream alive. Thousands of machines humming in synchronization so that somewhere, a child can send a virtual bird to another child and both can gasp at the light that jumps between them. That's not just engineering. That's devotion disguised as code. You might laugh, but Pokemon has become a moral compass for technology. Proof that connection needn't mean exploitation. That a digital economy can still be built on care. It shows that people will cherish what feels sincere, even if it's simple, and they will tire of what feels clever but cold. Look at your own habits. When the world overwhelms, you don't open the loudest game, you open the gentlest. You return to a place where colors are soft, where loss is temporary, where every stranger you meet says something kind before you part. That is the world Tajiri built, not a challenge to reality, but a reminder of what reality could be. Patience. Everything alive in the Pokemon world teaches patience. The eggs you carry in your party will only hatch after a certain number of steps. No shortcut, no button mash, just motion. The quiet discipline of going somewhere for its own sake. A screen counter ticks invisibly, but what's really being measured is attention. You learn to value the journey because the destination refuses to hurry. Patience is built into the very texture of those games. The turn-based rhythm, the pauses between animations, the deliberate menus that make you breathe between choices. In a culture of speed, Pokemon stays stubbornly slow. It reminds you that time is not an enemy. It's a habitat. That every living thing, even one made of pixels, deserves a moment to be noticed before it disappears back into code. As a child, you didn't name it philosophy. You just knew that holding a Game Boy under the covers and waiting for an egg to hatch felt different from waiting for a download bar. One was boredom, the other was hope. It's strange how hope always takes longer than we expect, yet we never resent it for that. Kindness. In battles, kindness hides under mechanics, status effects wear off, fainting never kills. The game refuses cruelty by design. The music for victory is upbeat but never mocking. The theme for loss, melancholy but never scolding. Even your rivals evolve from brash to humble, teaching you that competition doesn't have to end in contempt. Outside the screen, kindness became community. Players built fan guides, sprites, and art for strangers they'd never meet. Forums that could have been toxic turned for a time into classrooms where generosity was the currency. Someone always answered questions like, "Where do I find a moonstone?" Or, "Why won't my Eevee evolve?" We learned digital empathy one reply box at a time. Kindness is what let Pokemon survive the algorithm era. When other trends chased outrage, Pokemon fans kept drawing, trading, teaching, creating. Because the core loop of the game, meet, understand, share, had already trained them to see value in helping. It was never about owning everything. It was about witnessing everything and leaving the world slightly fuller than you found it. Reciprocity. Every trade is an act of trust. You give something away before you see what you'll receive. That moment of suspension, when the screen flashes, communicating, and both players hold their breath, is sacred. It's the smallest experiment in faith. Even today, when trades happen through global servers, that shimmer of uncertainty remains. Will the connection hold? Will the other person send what they promised? In that half second, you remember childhood rules whispered on playgrounds. Don't cancel mid-trade. Keep the cable steady. Honor your word. And somehow those rules echo into adulthood. Subtle reminders of integrity learned in pixels. Reciprocity also lives in the way the franchise listens to its fans. Every generation borrows ideas from the last. Fan favorite creatures return. Quality of life tweaks appear because someone asked nicely. The loop is complete. The creators trade with the audience, each evolving the other. The long view. The more you think about it, the more Pokemon feels like a rehearsal for being human. We catch what we love. We train it with care. We let it go when it's ready to become something else. We travel with companions who sometimes outgrow us, and that's okay. Even the Pokédex, that encyclopedia of life, is a metaphor for empathy. You don't fill it by hoarding, but by meeting. Completion comes from contact, not possession. Maybe that's why the games never feel truly single player. Even when you're alone, you're aware of invisible others, past trainers who walked this route, future ones who'll find your footprints. You move through their echoes, and they through yours. It's an ecosystem of care disguised as a hobby. When critics dismiss it as kid stuff, they miss the depth of that care. Few artworks have taught so many people that gentleness can coexist with excitement. Few systems have shown that kindness scales. Pokemon did both quietly, through repetition, through design that trusted children to understand decency without explanation. The echo of growing up, at some point, every player becomes the professor. You start the game again, but now a younger relative or your own child is the one choosing a starter. You stand behind them, smiling when they pick the same one you once did, or a different one for reasons they can't articulate. You answer their questions with the patience the game once taught you. And when they gasp at their first catch, you feel something close to spiritual continuity. This, you realize, is how myths survive. Through joy, not duty. You might even join them in battle and deliberately lose. Not to coddle, but to let them taste victory's melody. To show them that competition and affection can coexist. That's the unspoken curriculum Pokemon has been running for nearly 3 decades. Emotional intelligence disguised as play. The world keeps turning outside the games, the seasons keep rotating through releases. There's always another region, another roster, another chance. People sometimes joke that the franchise never ends, but that's its quiet brilliance. Life doesn't end, it continues. Pokemon mirrors that continuity: birth, growth, rest, renewal. Each installment is a year in a living calendar of wonder. When the 20th anniversary arrived, ads showed children from the 1990s, now grown, handing controllers to their own kids. The tagline read, "Train on." It could have said, "Carry on, love on, dream on." The words didn't matter. The sentiment did. It was an intergenerational handshake, the Link Cable spirit reborn in eye contact. A pause before the future. Now, as the modern games stretch into open worlds, something poetic is happening. The camera finally gives you the horizon. For the first time, you can see the world the way Tajiri saw his field. Vast, humming, full of motion you can't predict. And yet, even with infinite space, the moments that matter are still small. The quiet between routes. The cry of a new creature. The pause before a Poké Ball clicks shut. Scale changed. Tenderness didn't. You can almost feel the circle closing. The boy who once chased insects built a universe that taught the rest of us how to chase a light, carefully, respectfully, joyfully. He gave us tools to explore it, then reminded us to set it free. The story of Pokemon could have ended a dozen times already. It could have vanished after its first success, the way many miracles do. It could have been buried under its own merchandise, drowned in its own nostalgia. Yet somehow, it keeps walking beside us, not sprinting ahead, not lagging behind, but matching our pace like an old friend who knows when to speak and when to listen. When Tajiri dreamed it, the internet was barely a rumor. Now it threads the planet like the veins of some great digital creature. And still, the design philosophy is the same. The smallest gestures matter most. A trade request, a gentle sound cue. The moment a stranger across an ocean sends you a tiny icon and you realize you just shared joy with someone you'll never meet. The world keeps getting louder. Pokemon keeps teaching quiet. The architect and his field. Imagine Satoshi Tajiri now. Older, slower, hair flecked with gray. He doesn't appear in public often, but you can picture him walking through a park at dusk, hands in pockets, eyes half closed against the last light. The cicadas are still there. Tokyo has swallowed his childhood town, yet somehow the sound remains unchanged, a living bridge between decades. He hears a group of kids laughing at something on their phones. He glances over and sees them chasing a digital butterfly that flutters only on their screens. He smiles the small, private smile of a craftsman whose work outgrew him but stayed kind. Maybe he wonders what the world will make of Pokemon 100 years from now. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he already knows that the moment someone catches a creature and whispers its name, the cycle begins anew. Curiosity, care, release. The field he loved no longer needs to exist in a single place. It exists wherever someone pauses long enough to notice the life around them. Technology grows roots. The technology itself has changed beyond recognition. Where once there were cartridges the size of chocolate bars, there are now downloads that slip silently through air. Where once you linked cables, you now link clouds. Yet the soul of the experience refuses to be replaced. Augmented reality glasses are coming. Some prototypes already project small companions onto the edge of vision. A Pikachu on your desk, a Rowlet perched in the corner of a library shelf. They blink, they breathe, they wait for you to look up. It's both eerie and beautiful, the imaginary becoming ambient, the game dissolving into daily life. People worry that such technology will erase solitude, but Tajiri's design language suggests the opposite. He always built spaces within spaces. Tall grass where chance lives, caves where silence reigns, safe towns where healing happens. Even in AR, those patterns will hold. Pokemon will always include places to rest. Virtual reality is next. Experiments already let players stand inside regions they once traversed from above. To walk through Pallet Town at eye level, to hear Pidgey wings overhead and the crunch of gravel underfoot. It's surreal, but strangely intimate. The fantasy was never scale, it was presence. We wanted to be there, and now we can. Yet even with headsets and haptics, the joy will remain the same. The gentle spark when connection feels real. The science of soft power economists call Pokemon one of Japan's greatest cultural exports. Billions in revenue, hundreds of products. But behind the statistics is something more subtle. An entire planet reminded that gentleness can be powerful. While other global phenomena sold rebellion or dominance, Pokemon sold care. It taught that you could lead with curiosity instead of conquest, that you could compete without cruelty, that empathy could be gamified and still feel sincere. Universities have studied its longevity. They mention network effects, brand management, incremental innovation. All true, but incomplete. The real reason is emotional ecology. Every game gives more than it takes. Each version leaves the player with an extra fragment of tenderness, and over decades those fragments accumulate into culture. You can see it in how people talk online. Phrases like shiny luck to you, or may your IVs be high. Beneath the jargon is kindness disguised as math. In a digital world often ruled by sarcasm, Pokemon communities still say good luck and mean it. Inheritance. The handoff has already begun. Parents share Joy-Con controllers with children whose eyes widen at the first sight of tall grass. They teach the old songs, Lavender Town, Route 1, Pokemon Center theme. Kids remix them on tablets and send them back to their parents, who laugh through tears, because somehow the melody survived translation. This is how folklore works now. Not through campfires and oral tales, but through consoles and Wi-Fi. The myth adapts to whatever vessel can carry it forward. Every family that trades across a living room floor reenacts the origin story of the link cable. Every gotcha animation is a small echo of that first summer in Japan. We keep catching each other across generations. Time as companion. When you replay an old game, it greets you like a diary written in someone else's handwriting, your own, just younger. You notice how slow the text scrolls, how limited the color palette is, and yet how alive it still feels. The limitations become comfort. Pokemon has always known that what we call retro is really remembered safety. You wander through those old towns and realize they were never empty. They were waiting for you to come back with new eyes. That's the gift of this series. It matures alongside its players without demanding they stay young. It accepts your wrinkles, your changed priorities, your fatigue, and still says, let's go. You save, close the lid, and whisper a quiet thank you. Not to a company, but to the rhythm of persistence that kept this gentle world alive. A global constellation. If you could look down from orbit and see every screen playing Pokemon at this very moment, you'd see a constellation of small lights flickering across continents, bedrooms, cafes, trains, hospital waiting rooms, quiet apartments. Each one a portal into a world where kindness is the default. Billions of hours spent not escaping life, but practicing a better version of it. A sociologist once called it the most successful cooperative fiction in human history, because every participant contributes belief. The servers only keep the data, we keep the magic. What comes next? Soon there will be Pokemon that understand your tone of voice, that respond to emotion instead of buttons. Soon we'll speak to them in natural language and they'll answer with warmth, coded by engineers who grew up on the same dreams. Some will call it artificial companionship. Others will call it progress. Tajiri might simply call it another evolution. Technology learning empathy. And after that, maybe nothing dramatic. Maybe Pokemon will just continue to be what has always been. A mirror for how we want to treat each other. A living proof that imagination, when shared kindly, can outlast any hardware. The final walk home. It's late now. Your handheld rests beside you, charging quietly. The screen has gone dark, but your mind still glows with its afterimage. You picture the field again. Not the digital one, but the real one Tajiri loved. You're walking through it at dusk. The air smells of grass and warm circuitry. Fireflies hover like tiny pixels searching for connection. Somewhere, a Poké Ball rolls gently in the dirt and stops, its button pulsing red. You reach down, pick it up, feel its weight. Inside, something sleeps, not a monster, but a memory of curiosity that refuses to fade. You clip it to your belt, turn toward the lights of a distant town, and start walking. Each step sounds like a heartbeat, each breath like the hum of a Game Boy waking for the first time. The sky above is scattered with stars, each one a save file that never really closed. And as you walk, the music rises, soft, looping, eternal. The same theme that once leaked from a tinny speaker in the dark now fills the horizon. You smile. The dream continues. The world never stopped talking about Pokemon, but the way it talks has changed. Once it was magazine headlines and Saturday morning ads. Now it's quiet TikTok loops, soft piano remixes on YouTube. Nostalgia whispered instead of shouted. It has become background music for an entire generation's adulthood. An unbroken thread that hums beneath the noise of mortgages and deadlines. You hear it in cafes where 20-somethings trade cards beside laptops, in offices where someone's desk hides a tiny Bulbasaur, in the language of the internet itself. Starter, shiny, evolve. Even people who've never played know the metaphors. They say I leveled up at work. They say life is RNG. The vocabulary of kindness and persistence has leaked into everyday speech. The games taught us how to fail gently, how to keep showing up. They taught us that effort, repeated quietly, becomes transformation. That's why Pokemon still matters. Not as a franchise, but as a philosophy. The culture of comfort, pop culture once worshipped rebellion. Then the world grew harsh and comfort became radical. Pokemon slid naturally into that role. Its colors softened, its music slowed. Its fans discovered that gentleness could be aesthetic. People began streaming cozy Pokemon sessions. Ambient rain, slow walking, no commentary. Thousands watched, not for strategy, but for the sound of grass rustling, the rhythm of steps, the assurance that somewhere a world exists where problems can be solved with patience. It's a strange form of therapy, digital pastoralism. You can spend an hour doing nothing but fishing for Magikarp and still call it progress. It reminds us that not everything has to escalate. Some things can just be. When you're older, you start to understand that play itself is sacred. As children, we thought of games as escape. As adults, we realized they were rehearsal, small, safe universes that taught us how to care. Memory architecture. Every time the series remakes an old region, it performs an act of restoration, not repetition. Fire Red, Soul Silver, Omega, Ruby. They're like architects returning to childhood homes, repainting walls, fixing squeaky doors, leaving the layout intact. Walking through them feels like visiting a place that remembers you back. You stand at the edge of a pixelated sea and recall standing there years ago. Controller sticky from snacks, heart full of tomorrow. The water looks clearer now, reflections sharper, but the horizon line hasn't moved. It still says the same thing it said the first time. There's more to discover, but you can rest here a while. That's why people cry during remakes. Not because they miss youth, but because they realize they're allowed to revisit it without shame. Pokemon makes nostalgia feel like gratitude instead of grief. The weight of small things. There is a certain holiness in the details. The way a Poké Ball expands with a click, the tiny sparkle that signals a shiny encounter, the healing chime in a Pokemon Center, 4 notes that can calm a racing heart faster than meditation apps. Those sounds become memory anchors. They trigger whole eras in a single chord. First friends, first console, first late night, you stayed up just to evolve something by happiness instead of level. No monument could capture that better than a bit of chiptune echoing through headphones at midnight. It's why the music never leaves you. Even in silence, you can hum it, and the room feels safer. The invisible network. Behind every visible player, there's an invisible lattice of people who made connection possible. Designers who built netcode to survive imperfect Wi-Fi. Moderators who kept communities kind. Translators who caught the nuance in hundreds of move names so that humor and tenderness crossed languages intact. In the age of cynicism, that unseen labor is a miracle. Thousands of humans maintaining a world so that millions can feel wonder for 5 minutes on a Tuesday night. The credits scroll for 10 minutes now, names filling the screen like stars. It's tempting to skip them, but if you let them play, the background theme folds their efforts into music. The end of each game becomes an act of gratitude. A world without end. The 25th anniversary came and went. The 30th looms. Other franchises chase novelty. Pokemon chases continuity. Its timeline is less a line than a spiral. Each loop slightly wider, each return a little wiser. It knows that eternity isn't endlessness, it's rhythm. Somewhere in Kyoto, a team is already prototyping the next adventure. They will argue about lighting engines and rendering budgets, but eventually someone will ask the only question that matters. How do we make it feel like coming home? That question is the reason it endures. Return to the field night again. You're walking outside, phone in pocket, earbuds humming the Pokemon Center theme reorchestrated for piano. Streetlights shimmer like oversized fireflies. A breeze moves through leaves, and for a moment it's hard to tell whether the sound is real or remembered. You imagine Tajiri somewhere hearing the same wind. The boy who once cupped insects in his hands now holds a world in his absence. He doesn't need to tend it, it tends itself. You think about all the people you've met because of this small idea, friends, partners, maybe even your children. None of you share every belief, every language, but you share the ritual. Wake, walk, catch, heal, rest. It's the simplest prayer humanity has invented. And as you walk home, a single line drifts through your mind, soft as sleep. We never stop collecting light. The horizon fades, the music slows. The story always returns to night. Every journey ends with a screen dimming, a save icon spinning, a quiet line of text. Would you like to rest? You press yes, and the world exhales. That single word carries all the meaning in the series. Yes to stopping, yes to safety, yes to continuation tomorrow. Somewhere, someone else presses it at the same moment. Different time zone, same heartbeat. 2 tiny blue LEDs blink in harmony across an ocean. For a breath, the planet feels small enough to hold. The circle widens. Pokemon was never content to stay only in games. It learned to live wherever imagination could fit. In anime that made children cry for strangers. In trading cards that turned art into community. In plush toys that absorbed tears when life outside the screen became too loud. It became a vocabulary for care. To give someone a Pikachu plush is to say, I see the part of you that still believes in light. Even academics, always chasing patterns, eventually noticed. Psychologists wrote about how collecting in Pokemon built resilience, how naming things we love protects us from fear. Educators discovered that reading Pokédex entries improved literacy in kids who otherwise hated books. Scientists used it to explain taxonomy, probability, genetics. A silly game about imaginary creatures turned out to be a portable philosophy of curiosity. That's the hidden miracle. The boundary between play and learning vanished, and nobody felt cheated. When something can teach you and still let you dream, it doesn't age. It regenerates. The thread between generations. In living rooms everywhere, the ritual continues. Parents kneel beside children holding controllers too big for their hands. They teach the first rule, never run from a shiny. The second, always say thank you after a trade. The third, when you win, look your opponent in the eyes and smile. The children nod, even if they don't understand yet. Years later, they'll repeat those same sentences to someone smaller, and the cycle will spin again. There's a quiet divinity in that repetition. It's how stories become heritage. It's how a boy chasing bugs in a small Japanese town accidentally built a bridge that might outlast electricity itself. Time and memory. The first cartridges are fading now. Batteries die, labels peel, screens dim to green ghosts. But emulators rise, remakes arrive. Fans preserve code like monks, illuminating manuscripts. They call it archiving. It's really devotion. You might load one of those ancient files someday and see your childhood name still there on the trainer card. 8 badges, playtime, 97 hours and 42 minutes. A timestamp from a weekend when your biggest worry was beating the Elite Four. You'll smile, not because you want to go back, but because that version of you is still alive somewhere, perfectly paused, waiting to continue. Art rarely offers that kind of mercy. The world, as Pokédex outside, real creatures flicker past car headlights, moths, beetles, birds migrating south. You can't help labeling them in your head, not with their Latin names, but with the nicknames of your youth. You whisper, "That's a Butterfree," and the world answers, "Tajiri's field has won." We all see through his lens now. Everything alive is data worth loving. Even scientists admit it changed them. A generation of biologists chose their path because of that pixelated encyclopedia. Whole careers in conservation trace back to a single cartridge. It's easy to mock until you realize the forests are fuller because someone once wanted to catch them all. When the lights go out, eventually every adventure ends. Consoles age, servers shut down, new systems arrive. But endings in Pokemon are never funerals. They're molds. The skin of one era slips off so another can breathe. There's a beauty in that kind of impermanence. We don't mourn, we migrate. We pack our favorites, step into the next region, and learn its rhythm. We trust that the people who built it understand why we loved the last one. That trust is the real inheritance. Technology will change again, but compassion ages well. The dreamers rest. Imagine the last scene not as credits but as quiet. You, older, sitting near a window at night. A console glows faintly in your hands. Outside, rain softens the city into watercolor. You close your eyes and can almost hear the cicadas of Tajiri's childhood blending with the hum of your charger. In the reflection of the glass, you catch your own face lit by the same kind of screen that once shone on his. Different era, same wonder. you realize you were never just playing. You were keeping a promise made long before you were born, that imagination, if tended gently, could survive anything. The music swells. The same four-note healing chime drifts through time. You let it play, unhurried. The last note holds a second longer than necessary, then fades like breath on glass. Somewhere, a new player picks up a controller for the first time. They don't know the history, the sales, the anniversaries. They just know a voice on the screen is asking their name. They type it carefully, press OK, and the world blooms open. Grass rustles. A tiny creature appears. A friendship begins. That's all it ever needed to be. Morning always follows the dream. After every good night, there's a continue, blinking on the screen, polite and patient. It waits for you like a friend at a train station who doesn't mind if you're late. That's the secret of Pokemon's endurance. It never hurries you. It's content to live in pauses. The time between work and dinner. The train ride. The moment before bed. Other games demand attention. Pokemon invites it. You can stop anywhere, save anywhere, breathe anywhere. It turns time itself into a safe place. The ordinary sacred Tajiri once said he wanted to make something that felt like walking through grass after rain. The smell, the shimmer, the sense that everything tiny and alive has a story. That phrase, after rain, became the hidden mood of the whole series. Every region begins in freshness. The puddles gleam, the air hums, the world feels washed clean and ready for curiosity again. We forget how radical that is. So many stories start with crisis. Pokemon starts with calm. It teaches that adventure doesn't require catastrophe, that peace can be the beginning rather than the reward. It's not about saving the world. It's about learning to love it. And that may be why it survives cultural weather. Fads rise and collapse, industries pivot, algorithms devour themselves. But somewhere in every cycle, there's a child stepping out of a pixelated house into morning light. That image is eternal. The map of imagination. If you could layer every region onto a single globe, Kanto, Johto, Hoenn, Sinnoh, Unova, Kalos, Alola, Galar, Paldea, you'd get something that looks less like geography and more like psychology. Each one represents a stage of growing up. Kanto is childhood, simple and bright. Johto is memory, gold-edged and gentle. Hoenn is curiosity expanding into chaos. Sinnoh is introspection, snowy and solemn. Unova is rebellion, skyscrapers, and questions. Kalos is elegance, adolescence turned theatrical. Alola is healing, sunlight after loss. Galar is ambition, the spark of adulthood. Paldea is community, the circle closing. Together they form a human map. You can trace your own life across them if you squint. Which region were you in when you made your best friend? Which when you fell in love? Which when you realized you changed? The games don't just mark time, they measure empathy's expansion. Language of light. Pokemon storytelling is visual more than verbal. A flicker of tall grass means chance. A beam of sunlight through forest pixels means safety. A small sparkle in the surf means discovery. It trains players to read the world by light. That literacy spills outward. Photographers talk about Pokemon light, that soft late afternoon hue that makes everything look slightly enchanted. Game designers borrow its pacing. Let the player breathe, then surprise them with beauty instead of fear. Even filmmakers reference it when they speak of gentle stakes. It's strange how a game meant for children rewired adult art to be kinder. A museum of moments. Somewhere on the internet, there's a database that lists every creature, every move, every ability. It looks clinical, numbers, data, charts. But to the people who've played, each line is a memory. 025 Pikachu isn't code, it's laughter on a playground. Number 131 Lapras is the bus ride home on a rainy day. Number 151 Mew is the first time you believed in rumors. The database is a museum, and the exhibits are feelings. Walk through it long enough and you start seeing yourself in its taxonomy. You're both the collector and the collected, documenting wonder while being documented by time. That's the paradox of nostalgia. It catches you back. The weight of silence. Not everything in Pokemon makes sound. The most meaningful moments are quiet. Standing in the Lavender Town with its haunting minor key, watching snow fall outside Snow Point City, pausing at a lake that mirrors the sky perfectly. In those silences, the game lets you feel small, but safely small. The way a star feels small in a constellation. You start to crave that kind of silence in real life. A world full of notifications begins to feel like constant battle music. So you seek out soft places, a walk, a page, a friend. Pokemon doesn't demand escape, it trains you for presence. The shared dream. The Japanese word nakama means friend, but also comrade and journey. That's the feeling that keeps communities alive decades later. People who met trading creatures in 1999 still send each other birthday messages. Some got married because of a forum thread about EV training. Some named their pets after their favorite starters. Tiny acts of connection, multiplied 1,000,000 times, became culture. It's not that the series stayed popular, it's that it stayed personal. Each player believes their story is the real one, and somehow, they're all right. Because Pokemon isn't a single narrative, it's a network of shared tenderness. Why it lasts. Analysts keep predicting fatigue. Every few years they declare the era over, and every few years a new region launches and sells millions. The cycle isn't fueled by hype, it's fueled by inheritance. Children receive not only the cartridge but the attitude encoded within it. Curiosity, patience, care. That's a harder legacy to measure, but you can see it in how gently the brand's fans defend each other online, in how often they volunteer to help new players, in how the discourse always circles back to joy. Pokemon lasts because it's designed around the renewable resource of kindness. No other energy system has proven so sustainable. The return home. Eventually, every trainer finds themselves back at the starting town. Not in the game, but in life. You visit the place you grew up, the neighborhood streetlight where you once traded cards, the school hallway where you hummed the theme song under your breath. It feels smaller now, but the echo is exact. You realize you never left, you just evolved. The game prepared you for this. It taught you that going back isn't regression, it's recognition. That seeing with wiser eyes is its own kind of exploration. So you stand there for a moment, listening. A bus rumbles past. Leaves move against asphalt. For half a second, you swear you can hear the rustle of tall grass. You almost reach for your belt, half expecting a Poké Ball. Then you laugh, because maybe you don't need one anymore. Maybe the whole world is caught already. The future's shape, developers say the next step is seamless integration. Games that recognize weather, time, and heartbeat. Imagine a region that changes with your mood, companions that learn your patterns, side quests that encourage you to call a friend. Some fear that kind of intimacy, but Pokemon has earned our trust. It never uses connection as a trap. It offers it as a gift. Tajiri's original dream was to make people look up from their screens. Ironically, that's exactly what the next evolution will do. AR lenses, real-world events, shared virtual ecosystems. They all lead back to that first impulse. Go outside, listen, explore. Technology, for once, returning us to nature instead of replacing it. The universal language. Every Pokemon name can be pronounced by a child learning to read. That's not coincidence, it's compassion and design. Simple syllables, rounded vowels, soft consonants. It's a lexicon built to be spoken by anyone. And in that simplicity lies unity. You can travel anywhere Earth, say Pikachu, and someone will smile. No translation, no explanation. That's the closest humanity has come to a shared word for happiness. Tajiri may not have planned that, but the universe seems pleased with the outcome, closing the loop. And now we're back where we started. The field, the child, the fireflies. Only this time the child is you, and the field is the life you've lived. You bend down, pick up a small stone, toss it gently into the grass. It lands with a soft thud that feels like punctuation. The night glows around you, somewhere between pixel and starlight. The melody begins again. The same 4 notes that have carried us through every console, every era, every heart. You hum along without realizing it. It's not nostalgia. It's muscle memory of hope. The fireflies pulse in rhythm. The screen in your mind fades to warm gray. Text appears, faint but clear. Would you like to save your adventure so far? You press yes. The world outside your window is quiet. Streetlights hum, distant cars murmur, and somewhere in that low mechanical heartbeat, you imagine the faint chime of a Game Boy starting up. The sound no longer belongs to a device, it belongs to time itself, the opening measure of a generation's lullaby. The pulse of play. Every few years, another headline wonders if Pokemon has finally peaked. But play does not peak, it circulates. A child's first capture becomes a memory that waits 20 years, then resurfaces when they hand a controller to someone new. It's the closest thing we have to reincarnation inside culture. You can trace that current across decades of hardware, from plastic buttons to touchscreens to voice commands. Each new interface feels temporary, yet the pulse inside remains steady. Encounter, befriend, release. The loop has the elegance of breathing in code. Game Freak once joked that they never planned an ending because endings make children sad. That decision became philosophy. In a world that worships finales, Pokemon teaches maintenance, the quiet art of keeping something alive without needing it to climax. The people behind the pixels. Think of the thousands who have built this dream. Artists drawing the curve of a tale at 3 a.m. Composers testing chords until they sound like sunrise. Localization teams debating whether a pun can survive translation. Most will never be famous, yet their fingerprints live inside every copy sold, somewhere in Kyoto. A QA tester catches a bug that makes a creature freeze mid-animation. She fixes it, hits compile, watches the sprite move again, and smiles. No one will ever know her name, but millions will see that motion and feel the world breathe correctly. That's the kind of invisible kindness this series runs on. Light in small rooms. During the long months when the world stayed indoors, people rediscovered these games as comfort. Streams multiplied, quiet voices reading dialogue aloud like bedtime stories for strangers. One said, "I Just need to walk through grass that doesn't judge me. Thousands nodded in chat. Pixels became therapy. The irony is that Pokemon has always been about leaving the house, yet it also knows how to make four walls feel wide. When you walk through an in-game forest at midnight, headphones on, you're outside in spirit. The mind expands and suddenly the room feels like a planet. That's what art is supposed to do, remind you that freedom begins in perception. Dream logic. Dreams rarely follow structure and neither does affection. Try to explain why a specific creature means so much, why you always pick Chikorita, why you never evolved your Pikachu. And words collapse. Love resists patch notes. It just is. That's why the franchise thrives despite criticism. You can't optimize sincerity. Even when a release stumbles, people stay because the feeling underneath still hums. It's like a song slightly out of tune that you keep humming anyway. The Science of Hope economists call Pokemon a long-tail property. Marketers call it IP longevity. But both terms miss the emotional chemistry at work. Hope, repeated, becomes habit. Every battle screen that says, "What will you do?" is a small rehearsal for optimism. It implies that options always exist. That belief has saved more spirits than any statistic could measure. Teachers noticed it first. Shy students who wouldn't speak about themselves would talk endlessly about their teams. Therapists noticed it next. Kids using creatures as avatars for emotions they couldn't name. Pokemon turned vulnerability into play and made healing feel adventurous. The planetary campfire. Step back far enough and the whole phenomenon looks like a global campfire. Different languages, same warmth. Conventions buzzing like miniature cities. Art trades that cross oceans. Tournaments where rival nations share snacks after matches. It's proof that competition and community aren't opposites, they're siblings. We gather around imaginary creatures to remember that cooperation is our oldest instinct. If aliens ever studied Earth, they might notice that one of our most unifying behaviors is pretending to catch imaginary animals together. They'd find it illogical and profoundly hopeful. Endgame. The newest titles shimmer with realism. Rain beads on scales, clouds roll across skyboxes. Yet the first thing every veteran checks is whether the old sound effects remain. The plink of a menu cursor, the whoosh of a Poké Ball. If they're intact, everything else can change because continuity isn't graphics, it's comfort. That's why Pokemon will outlive its creators. As long as someone, somewhere, can hum that tune, the world remains a little less lonely. Nightfall. So here you are again. Another night. Another soft glow of pixels. You've walked through memory and myth, through fields and code, through every evolution the human heart can render. The story has carried you far enough, now it sets you down gently. The music fades to the 4 healing notes. Outside, real insects sing. You can't tell where one song ends and the other begins. Maybe they never were separate. You save your progress. The screen says, "See you next time." You believe it. The room darkens, your breathing slows. Somewhere, the link cable hums between stars. And as the screen fades to black, you realize it never truly ends. Because stories like this one don't conclude. They rest. Tomorrow someone will start a new game and another child will step into tall grass. Somewhere, another link cable will hum to life. Until then, sleep well, dreamer. This is Game Over Goodnight.